My name is Jim Kalbach. I'm the author of 3 books. The last book that I wrote came out last year, is called Jobs to Be Done Playbook, the Jobs to Be Done Playbook. And that's what we wanted to talk about here for the next 15 or 20 minutes. I also have a website called the Jobs to Be Done Toolkit, where you can find some free downloads. I like to start my talks about jobs to be done with this quote from Theodore Levitt, famous Harvard business professor in the 60s. He used to like to tell his students, people don't want a drill, they want a hole in the wall. And what he was reminding his business students is that you can focus on your business and your product. That's not a bad thing. If you're a drill manufacturer, you want to focus on drills and manufacturing and marketing drills. But he's also saying innovation opportunity comes from understanding the outcomes that people want. Right? It's not only about drills, it's also understanding about the outcomes, the hole in the wall that people want. In fact, if you start there, if you look at what people are trying to get done and work back towards the technology, not the other way around, you see opportunities for innovation that you otherwise don't see. So Jobs to Be Done is a field that has a several decade old history. And it's really about reaching an objective, is that you want to understand the objective that people are trying to reach, independent of technology, solution, brands, and products. So it's particularly well suited for startups because you might not have a product on the market. That's fine. Jobs to Be Done doesn't really care because we're not looking at your product and your brand and your logo and your features. We're looking at what people are trying to get done. That's our starting point, and then we work back towards the technology. The goal is to predict adoption, predict why would people use the solution you eventually come up with. And Jobs to Be Done theory says that if your product or your solution gets a job done better than others, people will choose that one. So if you understand the job and design around that, you'll have stronger adoption. Another way to say that is product market fit. Right? That's a relatively new term. It's been around for a number of years now, but Jobs to Be Done predates that. So Jobs to Be Done is really about saying we want our product to fit the market. We can research products, but let's start with the market. Let's understand what people need in the market and work back towards the right product. I want to make a couple of points here. The first is Jobs to Be Done is an innovation framework to explain market needs from the individual's perspective in order to accelerate adoption. Starts from the need and the outcome that people want before you have a product or before you come up with the solution that you want. Again, it's particularly well suited for startups because what it does is Jobs to Be Done gives you a language to understand problems independent of solutions. We often call it problem space research, right? And here's how it works very, very quickly at a super high level. I have workshops and we go over this for 4 hours or a whole day long workshop. And we look at all of the things you need to do in these 4 steps. So this is a broad process. It's what I call the core Jobs to Be Done process. If you're going to get started in Jobs to Be Done, this is what I think you should do. First, scope your Jobs to Be Done landscape. Talk about that briefly in a second, but you have to decide what are the jobs that you want to understand. Then you need to conduct some research. So get out of the building, talk to people, observe them. One of the first best things you can do, step number 3, is create a job map. Just map out that process that you observe. And then from there, you can find opportunities. And then there are a whole bunch of techniques in the field of Jobs to Be Done after you get to step number 4 that you can apply to do competitor comparisons, develop a value proposition, inform your roadmap, and so forth and so on. And that's really what my book, The Jobs to Be Done Playbook, is about, are all those plays you can do after you do this core process. But for me, this is where you want to get started with Jobs to Be Done. Do these 3 steps. And then number 4, you can start applying the rest of the plays in my playbook. Let's take a look at each really briefly. I'm going to go through this quickly. Number 1, scope your target job. And this answers the question, where do you want to innovate? As an innovator, you can innovate at different levels of altitude or different levels of granularity, right? You manufacture drills, maybe you want to understand making a hole in the wall. That's a fairly small job, making a hole on the wall. You can ask, why do people want to make a hole on the wall? Maybe they want to hang a picture or hang a shelf, right? Can we innovate at that level? Yeah, we can innovate at that level. But maybe you want to go a little bit bigger than that. Maybe you want to say, yeah, that's part of home renovation, right? So we're not interested in making holes. Well, we are, but that's not going to be our focus of attention. And hanging something on the wall is maybe a little bit too small and less interesting. But maybe we want to innovate around renovating a home. So we decide that that's our level of granularity where we want to innovate, and we form job statements around that, and we focus on that. That becomes our frame for our innovation. We can go up from there, and then we get into the aspirational space. Why do people want to renovate their home? Because they want to improve their home life. You know, they want to be happy with their family. You start going up in the stratosphere if you continue asking why, and you don't necessarily want to do that, because saying people want to be happy is not a great place to start innovating. That's important to know. It's important to know that people want to improve their home life for marketing and messaging and that kind of thing. It's just not a great starting place, right? We want to start with something that we can define, renovating a home, and understand that as a process and what are the needs around that process. The next thing you want to do once you scope your innovation frame, right? Okay, we want to understand renovating homes. That's the target job. Then you go out and talk to job performers, people who do that. Doesn't have to be users of your product or customers if you have an existing product. Just anybody who renovates their home, they qualify as a job performer. So you want to understand the process of getting that job done. You also want to understand the needs and the pain points they have along the way as well, too. Define the main job, conduct the research, and then what you need to do is extract from your research. Jobs to be done starts qualitatively, by the way. So this is qualitative research, interviews, observations. And from that, you want to extract the elements of jobs to be done. I talk about them a lot more in my book, but briefly, jobs to be done is a language, and it comes with rules of formulation that you need to then translate what you observe into these statements and things called, in this case, job steps. Right? You don't reference any technology, solutions, and methods. It's very granular, so you don't use ands or ors. We just start extracting things as building blocks. They all begin with a verb, right? We don't mix in things like need statements and job statements. They're separate, and you're always representing the job performer's perspective. So there are different rules and grammar of jobs to be done. Again, that's what I teach in my workshops. And we go over exactly how to do that, how to extract the insights from your research in the jobs to be done way, so that you can do what I think is the first best step, create a job map. So if we're trying to understand renovating a home, what we want to do is break that down into the sub goals. If my goal, my objective is to renovate a home, there are sub goals or steps along the way, right? You need to decide to renovate a home. Then you need to plan, identify renovators, obtain permits if needed, determine the financing, renovate the home, verify implementation according to plan once you get started, make adjustments, clean up, and then you finalize the renovation. All right, this is a very, very simple map. It can get a little bit more complicated than that. I'm only simplifying it for our purposes here. But what you can do is describe that process without using any technology or solutions. You're not talking about your own brand. You're not talking about features or technology. In fact, you want to ask yourself, what did they do decades ago? How did they used to renovate homes 50 years ago? They did it this way. By removing technology from your language, you're future-proofing your thinking, by the way, as well, too. Because guess what? In 5 years or 10 years, this is also how people are going to renovate homes. Technology goes in and out of style. Technology changes a lot quicker than jobs to be done. Jobs to be done are a lot more stable. Once we understand the jobs to be done, we have a stable unit of analysis. In this case, renovating a home, and I broke it down into job steps that forms a process. So I need to really understand that process. That's what Theodore Levitt was saying. Understand the process of getting that job done. And then once you start analyzing this, you can do things and start quantifying your opportunity. In the fourth step, you can actually quantify your opportunity. I can create a survey for all of those job steps, and I can ask people, how important is this to you for each step? And how hard is it to get done? Or how satisfied are you in completing this step? Right? So for every job step, I have a survey with 2 items. Scale 1 to 10, how important is this for you? Scale 1 to 10, how satisfied are you in getting this completed? From that data, so I did qualitative research to get these job steps, then I can quantify where my opportunity is. Because if you look in the lower right-hand corner here, those steps, your market told you, those steps are important, very important, in fact, and they're hard to get done, or their satisfaction is low. That's a synonym. Hard to get done, satisfaction low, right? That's where you want to start. As an innovator, you want to start by addressing those needs. If you're a startup and you don't have a product on the market and you get those things done better than anybody else, you'll increase your chances of adoption. Said another way, you'll have better product market fit, right? So then we can go back to our job map and say, those are the biggest pain points right now. In this point in time, those are the biggest pain points. Let's solve for those things. So what Jobs to be Done is it frames your innovation, your field of inquiry, but then it also gives you ways to pinpoint where you're going to get started. Doesn't tell you what solution you should make, but it tells you where you should focus your energy when you're creating a solution. That we want to get those things done better than anybody else. And if we do, the Jobs to be Done theory predicts that people will pick up our solution better because it's actually filling a gap in the market. That's what the survey showed you, where the gaps are. And then again, from here, there's lots of different techniques that you can use. You can use this to inform your roadmap. You can integrate this now into design thinking and design sprint activities. So we would take this into a design sprint and then say, how can we help people identify renovators better than anybody else on the market? Because that's the biggest pain point they had. So your starting point for things like design sprints, your starting point for things like lean testing is now a lot more constrained. So your cycles of build, measure, learn are theoretically shorter because you've already identified a problem. You're not trying to find the problem with your solution. You found the problem independent of your solution so that your solutioning then is a lot more directed. So again, you scope your Jobs to be Done landscape. Where do you want to innovate? And you can pick any level. There's no right or wrong answer. You just have to decide what's your field of reference for your innovation effort. Conduct qualitative research, extract the Jobs to be Done elements, arrange them as a job map. And then from there, you can apply a whole range of Jobs to be Done techniques, prioritize the steps, prioritize the needs, write things called job stories, integrate that into your product roadmap, develop a value proposition, do a competitor comparison. There's lots of other things that come after this. Once you do that core step, you have a basis for applying all of the other Jobs to be Done techniques that are out there. And here are some of those. I just mentioned some of these here. That Jobs to be Done really, for me, is a starting point for innovation. And that starting point is a human starting point. You're not starting with your own technology. What can we do? You're not starting with your own brand. What will people buy and pay for? You're starting from the pain points, the needs that people have, and you work back towards the technology. Jobs to be Done gives us a language to talk about problems without talking about solutions. And that's a really powerful piece of insight. Doesn't have to be big upfront research. You can actually do some of this pretty quickly. To create a job map does not take a ton of effort. A couple of weeks and you can have a working job map where you're starting to prioritize as a team, as a company, where you're going to focus your innovation effort. So the second point I want to make is there are many techniques in Jobs to be Done, and they can be applied both formally and informally to make insights actionable, actionable. So again, the next step after you do that core research and create a job map would be to then use other techniques in the field of Jobs to be Done to make that actionable, right? Road mapping, creating job stories, integrating this into lean cycles, build, measure, learn. And you switch from understanding the problem to trying to understand the best solution that will address that problem. Here's the thing that I think is really interesting about Jobs to be Done. It's not a design discipline. It's not a product discipline. It's not a marketing discipline. It's not really owned by any one department or any one field or any one existing discipline. That you can define your company direction based on market needs. And there's stories of people doing that. But I talk to marketing teams. I'm talking to sales teams right now on how they can use Jobs to be Done to get better discovery calls. Product, I just gave examples of how you can use this to inform your product roadmap. Customer success, support, HR. So the Jobs to be Done language actually becomes something that everybody across the organization can align to without having any kind of disciplinary territories associated with it. It becomes a human-centered way to bring different functions together. Great example of this is the company INTERCOM. If you don't know INTERCOM, check them out, intercom.com. They have a messaging platform where you can message your customers. There's in-app chats. If you have software, there's customer support. There's ways to bulk message people, right? It's really a way for you to stay connected with everybody in your market. Everybody in your company can be connected with everybody in your market. And to do that prior was very messy. And the guys at INTERCOM sat down and they looked at how the job was getting done prior, and they said, we want to simplify that, right? So they saw an opportunity to simplify, and that's what their solution ended up doing. But the way that they framed their whole company, actually, and even the product, the way they framed that was using the language of jobs to be done, understanding problems independent of solutions, and then coming up with solutions. And here's Des Traynor, one of the co-founders of INTERCOM. They have a great book, by the way, called INTERCOM on Jobs to be Done. So I recommend the INTERCOM approach to jobs to be done in their book. And Des says that jobs to be done gave us a better way of framing what we felt. It's not just a great way to think about the product. It's become a marketing strategy at INTERCOM, as well as informing research, sales, and support. So they've used this, throughout product development, research teams, but then also to then spin that off into how are you going to create marketing messages? How is sales going to approach things in a better way? So Jobs to be Done as a startup, Jobs to be Done really helped them. And I think primarily because Jobs to be Done doesn't care if you have a product on the market or not, because your starting point is understanding human problems, and Jobs to be Done gives you a way to do that. Ultimately, what Jobs to be Done does, and this is my third point, brings a mindset shift across departmental lines, right? It helps you think about the individuals that you're trying to serve, what they're trying to get done, not the problems they have with your product, right? Which is important to know, but all of those little complaints and products you have about your problems you have about your product, that's interesting. But where real innovation happens is when you get a job done for a human being. If you can do that better than anybody, you win. And that's what Jobs to be Done helps you do. So thank you very much. The Jobs to be Done playbook, I talk about this and a lot more. And then I give a list of techniques that you can use. I also have a resource with some free downloads called the Jobs to be Done Toolkit. We also have some online learning there, and we do live workshops. We have a workshop coming up actually in 2 weeks. I see. We do it over a series of a couple of days. It's only 2 hours a day. It's not those full days. It's 2 hours a day with some self-paced learning in between. JTBD.tk/job maps. If you're interested in learning more, I basically go over some of the middle of my presentation here in a lot more detail. You get hands-on experience using Jobs to be Done. Thanks, everybody.